Hello everybody. Let's talk about the difference between private and public and the difference between static and not static. And we'll be using this Fox class that you've been working with recently. So over here I have just an example class with just a main method, and I'm running the Fox constructor, so I'm making a new Fox object with a random age, and the Fox is named Robert. Okay, so scrolling down in the Fox class, you'll notice that Robert has an age and is alive or not, and has a location and so on. So let's try and print Robert's age. I could say robert.age, and you see it's red over here, and it says age has private access in animals.fox, so there's a compile time error. And then over here it says one related problem. So what's the problem? The problem is what it means to be private is that these attributes, these variables, are only accessible inside the class where they're defined. So only the Fox class can access the age variable. And over here, I'm trying to ask a Fox what its age is, but I'm not allowed to access that variable, even though the Fox has that variable. Notice that if I made this public, now all of a sudden it's going to work just fine. So robert.age. And it's not just for reading. I could also say, here, let's do this. Robert.age equals 100, and then let's print out Robert.age again. So here I'm going to run it. We should see it display a random age. Then we're going to set Robert's age to be 100, and then another random age. Sorry, not another random age. Then you'll see it being 100. So there we are. Robert got created to be 38, and then we set him to be 100. Okay, so question, why would you ever want to make things private? Why not just make stuff public all the time? There's two really good reasons. The first reason is your object may have good reason to want to control what's possible with its own variables. In general, objects should be responsible for their own information. And so there's nothing stopping some other piece of code from setting Robert's age to be something nonsensical, like -100. And maybe the Fox object doesn't want to allow that to be possible. But if your variables are public, there's nothing stopping any other piece of code from doing whatever you want with them. So that's the first reason why you don't make things public. It's for protection. For the other reason why you don't make things public, let's imagine a new variable called energy level. So you could have this just be an int, and since it's public, other classes are welcome to do whatever they want with that variable. We could display it, we could increase it. Let's pretend we've written a whole lot of code, and in all the other classes we're constantly accessing this variable. Now we're going to change our minds, and we decided that we don't want the energy level to be a fixed integer. Instead, we want to calculate the energy level at a particular moment based on other things that are happening in the simulation. So we decide, instead of having energy level be an int down here, we wish that we had public int get energy level, where we're going to return something based on like the current food level or how far it's traveled or its age. It would be some like mathematical equation. So the energy levels are being calculated based on an equation. Well, if we did that, that would break all of our code, because when we delete the energy level variable so that now it's being calculated in terms of other stuff, all this other code is used to referring to that variable. So now let's pretend that the variable had been private all along. If the variable had been private all along, then other classes that need to access that variable would be using a getter method, a get energy level method. And originally the get energy level method would just return this object's energy level. So you could say this.energy level, or you could just say energy level. And so it might seem silly, like why have a method whose whole job is to just return a single variable? And the answer is because maybe later on you want energy level not to be a variable anymore, but you want to replace it with an equation that calculates the energy level. This frees you to do that. If all the rest of your code is always using a getter method, you can just change how the getter method works, and none of the rest of your code needs to change. Computer scientists call this low coupling. Coupling has to do with how tightly coupled, how tightly connected different classes are. And so by making sure that your classes aren't reaching inside each other to access each other's variables, instead making sure that your classes are running each other's methods, that's lower coupling, and it makes your code less fragile, easier to maintain, easier to extend the functionality of. Okay, so right now, say back out loud to yourself, what were the 2 reasons why you want all of your attributes to be private all the time? What were the 2 reasons? They are to give the objects control over what's allowed with their own variables. And the second reason is low coupling, so that it's easy to make changes to your class without affecting other code that might be referencing it.